I want you to pause for a second and think about the last time your partner finished during sex. Really think about it. Got a moment in mind? Good. Now I want you to think about the last time you finished. And I'm not asking this to make anyone feel bad. I'm asking because there's almost always a gap. And that gap has a name. It's called the pleasure gap. And today, my partner and I are going to close it, together, on camera, in front of the entire internet. No big deal. Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, hi, I'm Lena, and this is my partner, and we make content together about real relationship stuff. Not the polished, everything is perfect version, the real version. And today we're going to talk about something that honestly doesn't get talked about enough. Clitoral stimulation. But not in a weird, clinical, textbook kind of way. We're going to talk about it the way we talk about it at home. Honest, a little awkward sometimes, and genuinely useful. I'd like to point out that I was not warned that this was going to be the topic today. You were absolutely warned. You just didn't read the message I sent. Which is also a communication problem we should probably address in another video. Fair enough. Okay, so here's why we're making this video. Here's what nobody really talks about openly. The clitoris has over 8,000 nerve endings. 8,000! That is more than any other part of the human body. It is incredibly sensitive. It has a massive internal structure that most people have no idea about. And yet, the way sex is portrayed everywhere, from movies to whatever you find online, almost completely ignores it. Like, the whole thing is basically invisible in mainstream conversation. And that means a lot of couples are missing out on something that could genuinely transform their intimacy. And I don't use that word lightly. I mean transform. I'll be honest, before we started actually talking about this stuff, and I mean really talking about it, not just assuming I thought I had a pretty good idea of what I was doing. And I did not. And that's not a dig at him. Because I didn't know how to explain what I wanted either. That's the real problem. It's not that people don't care. It's that nobody teaches you this. Nobody sits you down and says, hey, here's how this actually works. Here's what feels good. Here's how to communicate about it. You're just supposed to figure it out. And most people kind of don't. Or they figure out one thing that works once and assume it's going to work forever, on every person, in every mood, every single time. And it doesn't. So today we have 5 techniques that we're going to walk you through. 5 things that we've actually tried, that we've actually talked about, and that have actually made a difference for us. And I want to be really clear, we're not experts. We're not therapists or doctors. We're just 2 people who got serious about learning this stuff and want to share what we found. We're going to go through the techniques. We're going to react to each other honestly. And at the end, my partner has a bonus tip that genuinely caught me off guard the first time he did it. So make sure you stick around for that one. Also, before we dive in, I want to say one thing that I think is really important. Everything we talk about today is a starting point, not a rule book. Every woman's body is different. And not just different from other women, different from herself, depending on the day, the mood, the moment. What works tonight might not work next week, and that's not a problem. That's actually kind of exciting, because it means there's always more to discover. Okay, let's get into it. The first technique is called layering, and when I first read about this, I genuinely laughed because I realized I had been doing this my entire life without knowing it had a name. So here's the thing. Direct stimulation on the clitoris can sometimes be way too much, especially early on, before the body has had a chance to warm up. It can flip from pleasurable to almost painful really quickly. And a lot of people don't know this, so they push through, and the woman is just silently hoping they'll move on, and nobody's having a good time. Layering is the solution to that. It basically means using something as a buffer between your fingers or a toy and the clitoris itself, so that the stimulation is indirect and gentler. And there are a few different ways to do it. The first is fabric. Keep the underwear on, seriously. I know that sounds counterintuitive, like, Isn't the goal to take the underwear off? But using fabric as a barrier creates this softer, more diffused sensation that can actually be incredibly effective. And also, if we're being honest, it's kind of hot. You can see the fabric getting a little bit damp, which is its own thing. And it builds tension in a way that jumping straight to skin doesn't. I will confirm that this is correct, and that I wish someone had told me this years ago. The second way to layer is using the labia, the inner and outer lips, as a natural buffer. So instead of going directly to the clitoris, you use those surrounding structures to cushion the stimulation. And again, I was doing this and didn't realize I was doing it until I learned what it was called. When I'm taking care of things myself, I instinctively use my labia to cover the clitoris because it's more comfortable for me. I never connected that to a technique. It just felt better. And the third way is using the clitoral hood. There's actually a little fold of skin that sits over the clitoris, kind of like a hood. If you work over that rather than directly on the exposed part, you get stimulation that's firm enough to feel good, but gentle enough to not be overwhelming. Can I just say, this was a game changer for me once she explained it, because I used to think more direct meant better. And that is so wrong. It is so wrong. And the reason this matters is that warming the body up this way through layers indirectly actually leads to stronger orgasms later, because the body has time to build up properly. It's not being overwhelmed into shutting down. It's being gently coaxed into opening up, and that's a very different experience. The second technique is called rocking, and I discovered this completely by accident. Like, it was not something we planned or read about. It just happened, and I could not figure out why it worked so well until I actually looked it up. So here's the deal. If you watch basically any mainstream adult content, the dominant image of sex is thrusting. In, out, repeat. And look, sometimes that's great. But when it comes to clitoral orgasms during penetration, thrusting is actually not the most effective thing, because the in and out motion creates friction, but it doesn't create sustained pressure on the external area, which is where the magic usually happens. Rocking is different. Instead of thrusting in and out, you stay deep inside and you just gently rock the pelvis back and forth, slowly. The key is maintaining contact and pressure while doing this minimal movement. And if she wraps her legs around you, pulling you in closer, that creates even more sustained pressure on the external clitoris. Less movement, more connection, more consistent sensation. The first time this happened, I genuinely had no idea I was doing anything different. I think I was just tired. And I had never, and I mean never, finished from that position before. I always assumed missionary was just not the right angle for me. And then suddenly, it was. And I couldn't explain it. And then I figured out it was the rocking. And it was wild. We have not been able to recreate it perfectly every single time, and I want to be honest about that because I think it's important. Sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes it doesn't happen that way that night. But when it works, genuinely one of the most surprising and satisfying experiences I've had. And we keep coming back to it. The lesson I took from this one is that sometimes less is genuinely more. Like, doing less, moving less was actually doing more. That messed with my head a little bit. That's a good summary. Less pounding, more grinding. Write that on a motivational poster. The third technique is called broadening, and this one is really a mindset shift as much as it is a technique. Most people approach the clitoris like it's a target, like there's a bullseye and the whole goal is to hit it precisely. And I get why the external part is small, it's sensitive, it seems like you need to be exact. But here's what most people don't know. The clitoris is actually huge. What you see on the outside is genuinely just the tip. There's an entire internal structure, 2 legs that extend back into the body, 2 bulbs on either side of the vaginal canal that you can't see but that responds to stimulation. The whole structure is maybe 3 or 4 inches long. It's enormous. So if you're only focusing on the tiny external part, you're missing most of the instrument. Broadening means you expand your touch to cover the whole area, the pubic mound, the labia, the lower abdomen, and you stimulate the whole neighborhood, not just the one little visible piece. Practically, this means instead of using one finger directly on the clitoris, which can be too intense and too narrow, use 3 or 4 fingers and cover more surface area. Move around the whole vulva, not just the one spot. If you're using a toy, a vibrator, or a wand, instead of pressing the tip directly on the clitoris, press the side of it against the whole vulva. That activates the internal structure in a way that the pinpoint approach can't. I thought being more precise was being more skilled. Turns out, the whole time I should have been less precise, which feels wrong, but it's not. And the same logic applies to oral. Instead of using just the tip of your tongue, flatten it. Use the whole surface. Cover more area. Let everything work together. What this does is wake up that entire internal network first, so when you do eventually focus more directly, it feels incredible. Because the body has been activated and primed. Versus if you go straight to pinpoint stimulation on a body that hasn't warmed up, you're working against yourself. The fourth technique, I'm going to call this one finding the frequency. Because it doesn't have one famous name, and frequency is what it's really about. Here's what we've learned. Consistency beats intensity, almost every time. People start slowly, find a rhythm that's working, and then, because they think they should escalate, or they get bored, or they just instinctively want to do more, they change it. They switch positions, or speed up, or try something new. And that resets everything. It's like turning a dial back to 0 right when you were getting close to the top. This was me. This was absolutely me. I thought I was being dynamic and exciting, and I was just repeatedly interrupting what was working. Yes. And the frustrating part is that when you're in the moment, you don't realize it's happening. From your perspective, you're engaged, you're into it, you're trying hard. And from my perspective, I was like, we were almost there. Why did we leave? So the technique is simple in theory, but requires real discipline in practice. When you find what's working, when the rhythm is right, when the pressure is right, when the spot is right, stay there. Don't add anything. Don't escalate. Don't get creative. Stay exactly there. Same pressure, same rhythm, same spot. Let the sensation build on itself. Because orgasm is not a switch, it's a wave, and you have to let the wave build without breaking it. And this is where communication is absolutely everything. The single most effective thing you can say in the moment is something like, right there, don't move. Or, keep going, exactly like that. That's it. You don't need a full conversation. Just that signal that says what you're doing right now is perfect. Don't change it. And honestly, hearing that is such a relief, because then I know I don't have to improvise. I know what's working. I can just focus on doing that thing consistently. Exactly. So both people win. She gets what she needs. He doesn't have to guess. Communication is not the enemy of spontaneity. Communication is what makes the good stuff actually happen. The fifth technique is about pace. Specifically, slowing down more than you think you should. There's this assumption, I think it comes from the same place as the thrusting thing, that more energy equals more pleasure. That faster and harder means better. And for some people, in some moments, sure. But for building the kind of deep, sustained arousal that leads to a really satisfying experience, slow is almost always better. Embarrassingly slow. Pause. Hold pressure without moving. Wait. Let anticipation do the work. I genuinely felt like I was going too slow the first time I tried this deliberately, like uncomfortably slow from my perspective. And apparently, that was exactly right. It was exactly right. Because when someone slows way down and stays present and holds the moment, it creates this anticipation that fast movement never does. Fast feels exciting, but it can also feel frantic. Slow feels deliberate. It feels like someone who's really paying attention. And that presence, that sense that someone is really there with you, is incredibly arousing on its own. And practically, slower movements allow you to feel more. You notice what's actually happening. You can adjust. You can read the response. It becomes more of a conversation between two bodies rather than one person performing at the other. Okay, I promised you a bonus tip from my partner at the beginning of this video, so here it is. So this is something I kind of stumbled onto, and I think it came from a night where I was genuinely just trying to be more present and less focused on performing or achieving something. And what I noticed was that staying a little softer, less fully erect in certain moments, actually created more surface contact, more rubbing against the base, more broadening, basically. And she responded to it really strongly, and I didn't know why at first. And when he mentioned it, I had to think about why. And I think it's exactly what he said. More contact, more surface area, less pressure. More consistent sensation against the external area. And it didn't feel like less. If anything, it felt like more. So for anyone watching, don't take it personally if your partner sometimes wants you to be a little less intense in certain moments. It's not about you. It's about what creates the right kind of contact for her body. Honestly, I'm glad we talked about this because I would have never known that on my own, which is literally the point of the whole video. None of this is stuff you're born knowing. None of it is stuff you figure out alone. It comes from talking, trying, paying attention, being willing to be honest even when it's a little uncomfortable. And from watching videos on the internet, apparently. So let's recap really quickly. Layering use fabric, labia, or the clitoral hood as a buffer so the body warms up properly. Rocking stay deep, rock the pelvis, keep sustained pressure instead of thrusting. Broadening stop aiming, start covering, use the whole hand, whole tongue, side of a toy. Finding the frequency when something is working. Stay there. Consistency beats intensity every time. Slowing down embarrassingly slow, hold pressure, let anticipation do the work. And the bonus? Sometimes softer means more contact, more surface area, more of what actually works. And underneath all of it, communication. Before, during, after. Ask what feels good. Say what you need. Give feedback in the moment. It doesn't have to be a big, serious conversation every time. It can be 2 words. Right there. Keep going. That's enough. That's everything. If you try any of these things, or if you've already been doing some of them without knowing they had names, drop a comment below. Tell us which one resonated most. We read every single one. And if this video helped you, share it, especially with couples who could use a little more of this kind of honesty in their lives. Subscribe if you want more content like this every week. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.